Last week, I talked about how Cory Booker was shamed into doing the right thing because he voted against a bill that would have facilitated the importation of prescription drugs from Canada. This would have substantially reduced the cost of prescription drugs, which we absolutely need. And we know that his vote was contingent on the fact that he took almost $400,000 from the pharmaceutical industry. So he was called out by Bernie Sanders. Millions of people across the country just rained down on him, and he was forced to change his position, and he's now working with Bernie Sanders on a bill that would import prescription drugs from Canada. Now, he states that he didn't support this bill initially because there were a lack of safety standards that compelled him to vote against it. Now, what he says is pretty contradictory, but he responded to Bernie Sanders' criticism about this bill, and he continued to lie and obfuscate the truth like he usually does.
Let me ask you about drugs, because that's obviously an important part of healthcare, and you know Bernie Sanders was very critical of you and 12 other Democrats for voting against a bill that would have allowed the importation of drugs from Canada. I know that you've answered as to why you voted that way, but he was very harsh. He said you and the other Democrats lacked the guts to stand up to the pharmaceutical industry.
Well, first of all, you know that was not a bill. That was
an amendment.
It was a resolution. It was
Okay.
not even something that, if everybody in the Senate voted, would have changed one thing. It was a late night resolution during a vote-a-rama that some of us were asking is, hey, put some safety requirements on it. They weren't put on, and so I went right to work. I said, hey, Bernie, Senator Sanders, let's work together. Senator Casey, Senator Sanders, and I put our heads together, worked on a bill that is incredible. Not only will it allow imports, but it gives the safety guarantees that a lot of us were concerned about. This has nothing to do with pharma, it doesn't do with courage.
Oh, I can assure you it has everything to do with Big Pharma and courage, Cory. So he continues to lie and obfuscate the truth like he typically does, and he's a pretty good liar. I'll give him that. But progressives aren't buying it. So he states it was not a bill, it was a resolution, so if everyone voted for it, it wouldn't have changed one thing. Well, that's not really true, because with these types of resolutions, if you vote for them, then it could facilitate a passage to the codification of a real bill that would actually allow us to import drugs from Canada. And this is really weird what he's saying if you think about it. So if he really bought his own argument, he wouldn't care so much about the safety standards as he's saying he does, because you can support this allegedly symbolic bill, but later when a quote-unquote real bill comes up, well, then you can make sure that it includes safety standards. But if this bill really is just a symbolic gesture, then why wouldn't you signal to the American people that you do want them to be able to import drugs from Canada? So I mean, you're contradicting yourself here. If this bill is just symbolic, if it's meaningless, then why would you care so much about safety standards? It makes no sense. Then he also talked about that the bill didn't have safety standards, so he went right to work. And again, this isn't how this whole debacle played out. Once you received criticism for your vote, you then espoused talking points from the pharmaceutical companies that lobby you as a means of damage control. And once you realized that we weren't buying what you were selling us, you then went to Chuck Schumer, who held a meeting with Bernie Sanders, and he literally scolded Bernie Sanders and told him to cool it on criticizing Democrats that voted against this bill because Republicans are the real enemy. And then you were hoping that Chuck Schumer could nudge Bernie to get him to tell his supporters to cool it. But once you realized that everyone was still pissed off at you, then you decided to go and ask Bernie Sanders to write a bill with you. So you didn't automatically do the right thing. You were shamed into doing the right thing. You didn't just automatically go to Bernie and say, hey, let's work on something else because I disagree with this bill. It wasn't until we called you out that you decided to change course. And once you realized that this may actually hurt your 2020 election chances when you run for president inevitably, that's when you decided to do the right thing. So it's not as though you just automatically got to work. You voted against this bill and you thought that you would go unchecked, but that's not what happened. We all know that your vote was contingent on the $380,000 that you took from Big Pharma. Now, thankfully, Jake Tapper actually called him out on this point.
You know that there are progressives out there who are looking for a white knight and were disappointed in that vote. And in addition, I think in 2014, you were the #1 recipient of donations from pharmaceutical companies and executives of them. How can these people who are very wary of Big Pharma and very wary of the fact that rising drug prices is one of the main reasons why healthcare costs are going up so much, that you're going to be on their side and not the side of all these pharmaceutical companies that are in your state?
I'm a big believer that life is about what you do and not what you say. And so my performance in the Senate when it comes to issues that really are important to my community, like, please understand this, a lot of folks in the Senate go home. I go home to Newark, New Jersey, Central Ward, a community of folks who are working class folks who are battling every day against rising rents, rising college costs, a lot of the challenges we're facing. That's where my loyalty lies. And we're trying to, in the Senate, my team is trying to focus on that. So when it comes to pharmaceutical prices, they're too high. And if you look at my performance in the Senate, whether it's a bill I just did with Senator Sanders, or talking and working about other ways to lower prescription drugs. In fact, go back to when I was a mayor, we had ways to, we did an incredibly innovative program to lower prescription drug costs and get more people into preventative care. So my work and and you know this from my history, what got me into politics in the first place was representing low-income communities. I still live in a census tract where the median income is $14,000 per individual. That's where my loyalty lies. I haven't put anything out there ever that's contrary to that.
Oh my God, stop fucking lying.
Wow. That was shameless. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. He says, I'm a big believer that life is about what you do and not what you say. Right. So you just voted down a bill that would have facilitated the importation of prescription drugs from Canada. So if life really is about what you do, then we know what you're all about, Cory. You took money from Big Pharma and then you voted in their favor. So it's funny to me that you're going to say this, and then he cites the bill that he recently created with Bernie Sanders. You don't get to do that. Are you serious? You don't get to brag about a bill that you were shamed into supporting once you got criticized for it. You don't get to boast about that, Cory. Are you joking right now? You literally have the gall to boast about the bill that we had to twist your arms to get you to support. No. If you weren't on the right side of a common sense issue from the beginning, then you don't get to brag about that. And furthermore, your contention with this original bill that you didn't agree with the safety standards, they just weren't there. How many people are dying from lack of regulations on prescription drugs in Canada, Cory? 0 people. Canada has higher regulatory standards on their prescription drugs than we have. So nobody believes you, Cory. I mean, you may be a good liar, and when we listen to you speak, you're charismatic, and I think some people who aren't educated about you are inclined to believe you, but what you did was so brazen that we see through your lies, even if you're so great at telling lies. It's bullshit, Cory. This guy is a master in obfuscation of the truth, and he really is thinking that he's going to run for president. And during this interview, Jake Tapper actually asked him, are you planning to run for president? And he said no, he shut it down, but come on. He recently attended a summit with Democrats where they talked about what ideas you would bring to the table if you do choose to run in 2020. So we know that he's going to run for president in 2020, and he thinks that he's going to be able to sweep this under the rug. But believe this, Cory, when I say this, progressives will never forget this. We will never let you live this down because it's something that's so shameless, so dirty, so corrupt that you deserve to be shamed for this as long as you're a politician. It's disgusting. So you don't get to lie and get away with it anymore. Those days are long gone. We're tired of Democrats. We're tired of Republicans. And you don't get to be just a little bit less shitty than Republicans. And in fact, Ted Cruz voted for this bill. So if even Ted Cruz is on the right side of an issue and you're on the wrong side of an issue, we know you're not progressive, Cory.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.